He runs to the 50. He runs to the 40. The guy is drunk.
Here's a guy that has a deep understanding of how to make defenses work.
And then.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode 20 of The Late Snap. And it is, of course, our Super Bowl special. It's been a long 5.5 months, but finally we are there for the grandest stage in American sport. Yes, it is the Super Bowl. I'm your host, as always, Mr. Darcy Slam Duncan, and I'm joined by my great friend and always co-host, Mr. Daniel from Sydney. But judging by your background, you're already in Las Vegas, Nevada. How are you, D-Lac? How is the Sin City?
Yeah, a bit misleading. Not actually in Las Vegas, just wishing I was there. Last time I was there was with you, Das.
That's right.
The trip. Yeah, some long nights in the casino on that trip. But yeah, unfortunately, we're not there this year and just recording from Australia. And where the time zone is not as football friendly, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, it is not. We had a lot of games at 5 a.m. or 6 in the morning, but this one will be a good time for Australians, 10:30 a.m. on Monday morning. Just back to Vegas, though, Dee. What did we get up to in Vegas? I can't remember. Were we there for the wrestling or something, or just to have a good time?
No, I think we just thought, if you're in America, got to go to Vegas. And yeah, we're not big like casino gamblers per se, but
No, we're not.
we did get into it a little bit. A few late nights, and yeah, I think we didn't have a very wild time considering probably what you heard about Vegas from all the stories and movies. Ours were probably pretty tame.
It was pretty tame. I think you had some strategy at how you played. Is it craps? Or you'd press a dice every 3 seconds, but it needed to be every third turn, so you'd win about 50 cents. I don't think it'd be enough to afford a Super Bowl ticket, D. They're going for about $9,000 US and about $13,500 Australian for the Super Bowl for the Chiefs and the 49ers on Monday.
Yeah, I think based on the amount of money I was winning at craps per day or per hour, I probably would have to be there for several years to get a Super Bowl ticket at that price. But yeah, probably if you think about it, not very affordable for most people. So going to the Super Bowl in America would definitely be a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Something I'd absolutely love to do. I've got so many great Super Bowl memories as a Patriots fan, you as a Giants fan, but it seems it's almost like, unachievable to go to the biggest stage in US sport. Like if we wanted to go to the grand final in Australia, we could pull a few strings, pay a couple $100, but as I said, it's nearly $9,000 for just a general seat. An average football fan in America can't really attend the game.
Yeah, and it's hard because you want the most diehard fans at the game, and the most diehard fans don't always have $9,000, and that's for the cheapest ticket. Sometimes, there's expensive tickets, way more than $10,000 to the Super Bowl, and so I think it does change the atmosphere of the game, and I'm not sure if it's a bit of disparity between Kansas City and San Francisco, but from what I've seen in so far of the traveling fans, it seems like there's a lot more Niners fans that made their way to Vegas. So it'll be interesting to see what the mix in the crowd is like on Sunday, America time, Monday here.
Well, just based on the press conferences we saw, it was almost like a WWE event. We had people on the mic, we had faces and heels. And going to this game, D, it seems like Kansas City had been thrust into the role of the heels. The booing of Patrick Mahomes, the booing of Travis Kelce. Is this just because the Chiefs are the new Patriots, they're the new villains of America? Or is it because of their combination and their relationship with the great Taylor Swift, the biggest recording artist in the world, who's sometimes on the nose of a few sporting fans, especially in the NFL?
You just finished your media session. Here you are again. 4 Super Bowls in 5 years. Can you even believe that, as talented as you and this team is?
Nah, man, it's a dream come true. I mean, even being one Super Bowl, you're appreciated, but I couldn't have never envisioned being in my 4th one, and it's a great experience every time.
I know how competitive you are, and I know that you don't like to talk dynasty. You let us in the media, you let the fans do that. Just tell me about this Chiefs group. What makes this group a potential Super Bowl champion team?
Yeah, we've dealt with a ton of adversity this season, dealt with a ton of challenges, and we're here. We're playing a great 49ers team, but we're going to go out there and play our best football and see what happens. I appreciate it, Niners Nation. We're here.
Oh, Niners fans, he's calling you out.
Yeah, I think it's probably a lot of the things that you just mentioned. Definitely, sports fans, they don't like to see sustained success. They like to see variety. They like to see new teams coming through. And I think the Chiefs have probably just been a little bit too successful in the last few years, which has kind of put them off. I think you had the Taylor Swift stuff as well. They've gone from basically being America's team in a sense a few years ago to, no doubt, as you said, the villains. They were booed very widely already in some of these pre-Super Bowl kind of press and media events by the fans that are there. And so I think most of America and the wider nation will be hoping for some Niners success. But look, there's so many storylines that really, would be well served by another Kansas City win. So I think on both sides of the coin, there's some really interesting stories here, no matter what happens.
You talked about the storylines there. I think we have to unpack it straight away. The biggest one is Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Can they go on to win their third Super Bowl together? I think this is their fourth attempt. They're obviously 2-1 before this, but if they were to another one, could they surpass the efforts of Joe Montana and the San Francisco 49ers in the 90s, and potentially Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, and the New England Patriots? That, for me, is the biggest storyline, because we've got potentially the greatest player in the history of the sport going for his third Super Bowl MVP and his third Super Bowl trophy. Do you see the parallels between the Chiefs and the Patriots, and this what really stands out for you going into the game?
Yeah, for sure. This is a huge storyline. And I guess that parallel between Mahomes chasing Brady and Andy Reid chasing Belichick in terms of the stats and success is such a great parallel that's happening at the same time. If you think about when we saw Brady and Belichick do their thing over the last 20 years, it felt like something that you weren't going to see again or for a long time. And then to be in a situation, less than 5 years after Brady's retired, where we're considering there's a new GOAT in town, there's a new best quarterback of all time, there might be a most successful coach of all time in 10 years. And I think if you think about the way it's unfolding, Mahomes is much younger than Brady was. Obviously Brady had that early success, but that was on a team where the Pats really were a well-oiled machine in terms of he didn't have to carry the Pats. Obviously, those later Pats Super Bowls and the 10-base Super Bowl, he was very much a front piece. But, Mahomes has carried a lot of these Kansas City Chiefs teams to the Super Bowl, and he's been such an important element of all those teams. You just can't see him slowing down in the next 5 years. And so it makes you think like something crazy is going to happen for him not to be in the conversation of one of the best of all time.
When he's stacked up against Tom Brady, it really does show how great Patrick Mahomes has been to start his career. I mean, the yards are better, the touchdowns are better. He's probably won more games than him as well. And this is his fourth Super Bowl appearance, and Tom Brady had 3, I think, in his first 5 years. Then I think it was probably 7, 8 years, probably a bit less before he went back to the Super Bowl and became the superstar that he is. But you're right, Patrick Mahomes has been the best player in the league effectively since his first year as a starter. No one had Tom Brady in that conversation that early in his career. He had one of the best defenses of all time. He had Ty Law, he had Bill Belichick, he had Mike Vrabel. He was absolutely loaded Rodney Harrison on that side of the ball. And he had to make the plays. He had to make the big plays in the big moments. But people didn't think Tom Brady's the best player in the league. I mean, Tom Brady might be the most clutch player in the league, but wasn't the best player in the league. Patrick Mahomes could be the most clutch player in the league. He could probably be the best player in the league. And he probably is, I don't know, he's probably the top 5 quarterback already deep before he's even won this game, if he were to win it. It's stunning that we're talking about this, 2-3 years after Tom Brady won his last Super Bowl. But such has been the impact of Mahomes that it's hard to get away from it. And you look at the coaching side as well. Andy Reid. If I said to you 2 years ago, 3 years ago, he could be the greatest coach of all time, you'd absolutely laugh in my face. This is someone that couldn't manage the clock, that couldn't win close games, that couldn't win big games. In 5 years' time, he might have the most wins of all time, and he could have 4 or 5 Super Bowls. It's stunning as a football fan to see what the Chiefs have done in this 6-7 year run with Reid and Mahomes.
Yeah, for sure. I say when it rains, it pours, and Andy Reid was in a big drought there of success in the sense that he was a really good coach. Everyone appreciated that, but the success wasn't there. And as he talked about, he got a lot of criticism around his clock management, and that was a storyline that stretched over a long period of time. But within 5 years, and you've got to go back to Mahomes here in a sense, pairing him with Andy Reid has just been such a successful partnership, which is now changed the perception of Andy Reid into putting him in the conversation as one of the better coaches of all time. Obviously, Belichick has nearly double as many rings as any other coach. But if you think about, what Andy Reid could do by the time he retires, considering his age, people are already jumping off the Belichick bandwagon already this year, and he didn't get hired.
He couldn't get a job in Atlanta, Dan. That's probably why.
Yeah, he didn't get hired by any of the teams looking for coaches this year, and so the conversation changes really quickly. And I think there's no doubt that in a few years' time, with Andy Reid and a few more Super Bowls, that'll be a conversation many people having, just like they're having the conversation already about Mahomes versus Brady. And I think there'll always be people in both camps. I think in particular, Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes appeal to different styles of people. You see Mahomes with the dad bod, not particularly caring about, diet or anything as much. And then you got the Tom Brady types, talking about all these superfoods and unactivated almonds and things like that. Obviously got the Botox, hair transplants, all that kind of thing. I think they operate in different styles, and I think they're going to appeal to different people. And just like the MJ and LeBron thing, there's always going to be one camp versus the other.
It's true. People are going to argue this forever and ever just because, Tom Brady started his career 23, 24 years ago. Patrick Mahomes is the person that if you just start watching football, you've grown up with. So it is going to be some of that LeBron, MJ debate. But it's just, I don't know. We seem to be getting a bit carried away already with Kansas City winning, what they're going to do, the all-time greatness of Mahomes. We don't consider the flip side yet. So what if Mahomes loses this? He's 2-2 in Super Bowls. He had to come back from 11 points down against San Francisco. So a lot of things have to go right. Jimmy G had to miss a big pass to Emmanuel Sanders in that game. Against Philadelphia last year, they came from behind. A few things went their way. We seem to be going, I think, maybe too early. So if Patrick Mahomes plays really well in this game and he continues on this, yes, he could be the GOAT. That is fine. But we need to give some respect to the opposition as well, because San Francisco, they are arguably the more talented team. And I want to talk about their quarterback as well here. Brock Purdy, D. This is someone you've been banging on about all season, all preseason. He's been statistically the best quarterback in the league. But even the Super Bowl, he's gotten this far. People are still doubting him. What do you make of Brock Purdy in this matchup against Patrick Mahomes and what he can do to send San Francisco on their way to another Super Bowl?
Yeah, he's definitely an important element in this game. Obviously, in terms of the San Francisco star power, he's not the number one. But we're talking about a guy who, no matter what you say, he's in the top 3 quarterbacks this year in terms of performance. He's a guy that, just a few years ago was the last pick in the NFL draft. And I think you can't really take that story and just shove it under the rug, because it's just such a key thing. Like, we're talking about a guy who pretty much wasn't drafted, who's now leading one of the best offenses of the last decade. And you can kind of talk about the star talent that's around him, and it's true. If you talk about the All-Pro first-team offense this year, there's 4 guys from essentially the 49ers on that team, and he's not one of them. So he's surrounded by elite talent, but his touchdown to interception ratio is elite. His quarterback rating was the best in the league. His passing yards were not only one of the best in the league, but one of the best for a 49ers quarterback. Well, I think the best in the last decade. And so if you think about this guy, everyone's sleeping on him and they're doing it at their own cost. But I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs will be. I think Andy Reid is one of the smartest coaches. And I think this Kansas City team knows that its defense is what's going to win it its next Super Bowl. The offense was what it used to be famous for, but now the defense is where the stars are at. And I think there's a lot of players on that team, whether it's Chris Jones racing at Brock Purdy or whether it's Snead and McDuffie in the secondary warring Purdy out of his preferred first options. I think this is going to be a tough day for Brock Purdy, and we'll see how much confidence a man who's been slept on and doubted and talked bad about will hold up in this big game.
I mean, all the things that said about Brock Purdy, as you said, he's been slept on. I don't feel that's shaken him at all. Like, I do feel he's a very fearless character. I think you got to have that when you're pick 262 in the 2022 draft, lowest draft pick ever to start in a Super Bowl. But as you mentioned there, I do think that he has a lot of problems on the Kansas City defense side. Obviously, Jones, how good their secondary is. for me, it's going to be crucial how Brock Purdy starts this game, because I don't feel like you can go 16, 17, even, God forbid, 20 points down against KC. That's game over. They have to come from 17 points down against Detroit 2 weeks ago. They have to come from 10 points down in the last quarter against Green Bay. I don't feel like KC is a team you can play catch-up football against just because of how good their secondary is. Despite the fact that he's got incredible skill position players, and Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, go on and on and on. If we see Brock Purdy start well in this game, D, then I'm going to have a lot more confidence in what he can do, because I know in the second half, when he heats up, he can play as good as any quarterback in this league.
Yeah, it's a weird one where San Francisco 49ers have done really well late in games, late comebacks, putting points on the fourth quarter. But that's exactly what the Kansas City defense doesn't let you do. It doesn't let teams score in the fourth quarter. It gets up to a lead, and then it really restricts opposing offenses. And I think it's going to be a really interesting game in terms of the way Steve Spagnuolo runs his defenses. He's very heavy in the blitz, but Brock Purdy, credit to him, we're talking about the confidence of the man. He was the number one performing quarterback against the blitz this year.
Great point,
Dave. Only in this 10 year. That's amazing because it shows composure and it shows an understanding of reading defenses. And it'll be interesting to see whether Steve Spagnuolo goes, no, we're going to do exactly what we've been doing all year, or whether he adjusts and accounts for how well Brock Purdy's played under pressure. And the fact that if you blitz and he's able to throw, a lateral or a short swing pass to Christian McCaffrey in their space, then that can cost you 75 yards in a big play. So there's a bit of risk there, no doubt.
As you said, the KC love to blitz quarterbacks, but Brock Purdy has been the best against the blitz this year, which is such a credit to a young player. And as you also said, his weapons, how he can get the ball out to his star playmakers. We mentioned Christian McCaffrey. He's someone I want to talk about at length. And Z, I love Christian McCaffrey, but I'd love for you to talk about the former Stanford product and what he's brought to this team, because we know how good Stanford have been running the ball in the past. Kyle Shanahan is a genius at designing run plays for the best running backs in football. But when they traded in Christian McCaffrey from Carolina for really now not a lot of draft capital, what happened to the San Fran team? How were they transformed when you have the greatest, probably dual threat back of the last 20 years in your possession?
Yeah, he's such a special talent. I can remember in 2017, I was living in San Francisco, about 30 minutes from the Stanford campus. And I used to check every weekend the box score of the Stanford games to see what his stats were. And coming into the league, there was huge hype around him. Same as Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott. You got these running backs who kind of come into the league with such hype. And Christian McCaffrey is one of those guys who's really held up against the expectations on him. He went to a bad situation in Carolina, a franchise that, besides their Super Bowl appearance about 10 years ago, hasn't had a lot of success. And a team that he would have been wasted on had he stayed there even an extra minute. And I think it was really which team was willing to pay for him. And if we talk about the San Francisco 49ers Super Bowl team, they've been willing to pay players and they've been willing to trade for players and give up things for players. And the fact that they went after McCaffrey with a lot of confidence in what that investment would bring, and the way he's played for them when he's been healthy has been amazing. But, that's a tough position to stay healthy in. It's a tough position to have a long career in. And I would love to see this season from CMC be capped off by a Super Bowl ring, because I think it's going to be very hard to replicate. And we don't see seasons like this from running back 3, 4, 5 times in their career, just because of how much it takes a toll on them physically. And so this has been an amazing season for CMC. I think we have to celebrate that. But there's no doubt there's players like Barry Sanders, Adrian Peterson, Damian Tomlinson, who've had amazing years at running back and pretty extensive careers, but don't have that ring. And so sometimes we don't put them in that upper echelon with the other running backs.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's a great point. So often we see incredible running back seasons from people. You even put, Todd Gurley, Jamal Charles. They didn't cap it off with a ring. They didn't actually, none of them got the chance to play in a Super Bowl that year. Christian McCaffrey is the driving force behind San Francisco's offense. He has the chance to have one of the greatest seasons of all time if he can cap it off in Super Bowl. And he's probably second or third favorite to win Super Bowl MVP. And really the matchup dictates what should be a strong game for him. Kansas City have been, I think, one of the worst run defenses in the league. I think ranked 28th during the regular season. They haven't been that tested in the playoffs, because obviously Baltimore only had about 6 carries from their running backs last weekend. But we do expect CMC to have a big game in this one. Just touching back on that trade, D, what do you reckon they actually gave up, the San Francisco 49ers, to get the great Christian McCaffrey from Carolina? Do you remember? Because it wasn't a hell of a lot.
I don't remember. I don't remember being a lot. Maybe like a first and a third and a player, something like that.
It was 2023 second, third, and fourth round picks, and a 2024 fifth round pick. So it was a lot of capital per se, but it wasn't any high end draft picks. And I think that's probably baked into the fact that they gave away so many draft picks to get Trey Lance, who I thought would be quarterbacking for them, hopefully in a Super Bowl. But in reality, they gave away third and fourth round picks to get the best running back in football. But the reason why it didn't cost the first round pick, even though running backs don't usually cost a first round pick, is because, as you said, he was often injured in the previous seasons in Carolina behind a really poor offensive line. Now he goes to San Francisco in a system designed to run the ball, and he's had one of the greatest seasons of all time. So I think it'd be incredible for him to top it off with a Super Bowl. Personally, how do you see him performing in this game? Not just beyond the raw stats, how do you think they'll carry and use him, especially in the first half of this contest?
Yeah, I think he'll be used heavily. I think in this game, it's going to be a game where you want to get early success. So I think they're going to run the ball early. I think there's no cap on McCaffrey now. There's no next week's game. There's no big game in 4 weeks that you're saving him for. So they'll run him as much as they need him to run, and he'll run hard. He'll run physically. And if you think about the year that he's hardly had a bad game. And so you're pretty confident in saying that he's going to have a good one. As you said, the Kansas City run D hasn't been one of their strengths, and we didn't really see it tested to the full last week. And so there's a little bit of apprehension, I guess, for Chiefs fans and people wondering how their run defense will go this week. I think they'll probably be happy with a modest McCaffrey game. I don't think they think they're going to go in and stop him and keep him to absolutely nothing. It'll be whether they can control the rest of the 49ers offense that will dictate their success.
Absolutely. I don't think they'll be able to stop or contain CMC, but if they held him to under 100 yards, and they'd be pretty happy with that, because if CMC has 120 yards, it's game over. I mean, they've controlled the clock. They've been able to restrict the big plays, because I find a lot with CMC, he scores the first touchdown in these games. That gives him the confidence. So you're not a gambling man, but every single week, CMC anytime touchdowns like $1.18, because it's pretty much a given fact that in the first 20 minutes of the game, they will feed him in the red zone to get his confidence up, get him chugging, and have him have a dominant performance. Those are the big names in the Super Bowl. We're going to take a quick break and come back with each team's journey to the big dance.
The biggest event in sports, the Super Bowl, is only a few days away. But have you considered where you are going to watch it? Well, I have just the answer for you. Now, it's not my home, it's the Orang Hotel. It is the place to be for Super Bowl 58. The lovely staff at the Orang will be serving ice-cold Pabst Blue Ribbon, and there will also be a halftime jersey raffle. Bookings are recommended as spots are filling up fast. So if you don't want to miss the Super Bowl event of this summer, head on down to the Orang Hotel, located in High Street, Armidale, Melbourne.
Next big storyline I want to talk to you about, Daniel, is obviously Kansas City's offense. We were very, very down on them earlier in the year, and I thought we were proven correct when they got stomped at home to the former Oakland, now Las Vegas Raiders on Christmas Day. And what happened since then, D? They've been scoring free will. They've been scoring what they've needed to win these big playoff games, and they've done it really through Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice. They've narrowed that target tree, as we've been banging on about over the last 2 months. But what have you seen as the progression of KC's offense from this freewheeling, pass-happy, deep shot team with Tyreek Hill, even with Juju Smith-Schuster when they won the Super Bowl last year, to a more conservative, take what you give us 4 or 5 yards downfield, feed Travis Kelce, and win with 21 points sort of team that we now see?
Yeah, you're right. It's been that kind of win by 21 points model. That's been what they've been doing well since Christmas Day. They score 21, they don't let their opponents score 21. And if you think about 21 points, a mixture of field goals in there, you basically need 2 touchdown scores. You need 2 really solid drives that take you all the way, besides just moving the football into field goal range. And so you don't need a huge receiver tree. You don't need to be passing, to 6, 7 different receivers like they were doing at the start of the year. As you said, they've narrowed in. They've learned to move the ball with Pacheco, get some of that small yardage stuff, and then throw to Rice, Kelsey, the occasional throw to players like Noah Gray, to get these really solid checkdowns, 10, 15-yard jumps. And it's paid off. It's been systematic. It's been really smart in terms of understanding what players you have on your roster. If you don't have Tyreek Hill, well, you're not going to get, those 75-yard touchdown plays all the time and get those quick points and all of a sudden have 14 on the board in the first quarter. They're just not that team anymore. But I think it's smart of Andy Reid to go, well, we've got a historically good defense. Let's ride these guys. We know they're going to keep teams under 21 points. Let's just score 21 points ourselves.
Yeah, they've really adapted very well, because you might think that, Patrick Mahomes, he needs to throw the ball downfield. He's got this urge within him to just throw bombs downfield and have, MBS or even Kadarius Toney when he plays on the end of them. But he's done well to sort of manage these games. I mean, he's obviously not a game manager. He's the best player in the sport. But similar to Tom Brady, when he didn't have elite weapons, he had Julian Edelman, he had Danny Amendola, he had a banged-up Gronk. He's able to dissect his way just to get to the correct amount and rely on his great defense. And you talk about how good the defense is. I mean, they've been so good this year. How do you, I think, as a coach, Andy Reid is able to not swallow his pride, but kind of readjust on the fly to the personnel that is presented to him and say, we're going to be a more defensive team this year. And when we need it, we will bring out Travis Kelce and he's going to have, 11 for 11 in a big playoff game. Do you think that this was something that was more cognitive going into this year, or it's more that as the season unfolded, he thought we need to be more of a run-heavy power side and just play on the defensive side of the ball and only need to score 20 points a game?
Yeah, it's a really good discussion point, and I think it's more the latter. I think he saw how the team played in those opening few weeks and understood that it's not the team that it's been the last few years. I think the Pacheco thing is interesting because at the start of the year, he had a few injuries and niggles and hadn't really established himself. Although he had a good end to last year, he wasn't taking a step up per se early in the year. But, basically just before Christmas, he kind of turned a corner. Had a few little niggles, but then just had that consistency of, 4.5 yards a carry, 5 yards a carry per game, getting 15, 16 touches at least. If you look back at the Super Bowl against the Pats, where they got, semi-blown out and couldn't put points on the board, when you look back at the box score there, their rushing game, they just had nothing there. They had Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who they used a very high draft pick on, but didn't really establish himself in the running game. It was kind of carried by the passing attack that year, and I think that really hurt Mahomes. I think he relies on a little bit of dynamic offense in the sense of if the running game can become a threat, that makes him so much more dangerous. And so I think it really can't overstate the importance of that Pacheco run that he's made in the last 5, 6, 7 games, and how important that is to this offense. And I think if we look at the sequence of Kansas City's journey over the last 4 or 5 years, establishing a running back that they can lean on for the next few years is a really important part of what they need to do. And even if there's not success this year, I think we'll see Pacheco be a really important part of their offense for Mahomes the next few years.
Absolutely salient and great point there, D. Every great quarterback needs a good run game at some point to ease the pressure on him. And thing is, Andy Reid actually does like running the ball, at least from a fantasy perspective. I've noticed that when he's had good running backs, he's fed them, especially in the red zone. Jamal Charles, Kareem Hunt. When he's had a balanced sort of dynamic between the pass and the run, that's actually made his quarterback have better, more efficient stats. I mean, Mahomes wasn't particularly efficient this year, 27 touchdowns, 14 INTs, but having a good run game, I feel, has given him more confidence to have a turnover-free playoff so far after throwing 14 interceptions in the regular season. The run game and Isaiah Pacheco will have a big, big say in this contest, I feel. D, one more storyline to finish us off, and it is the San Francisco 49ers journey to the Super Bowl. We all know how it went down last year. Brock Purdy injuring was it a UCL? Was it an elbow injury?
Yeah.
Getting kicked out of the NFC title game. We had Christian McCaffrey playing quarterback in that one. That's how dire things were in San Francisco. But now we are a year later, and Brock Purdy is leading his team to the Super Bowl, looking not fantastic, but looking very accomplished in that role. Let's rewind maybe 4 or 5 years back, though, D. It wasn't the same sort of circumstance in San Francisco when Kyle Shanahan took over. This was a franchise that you saw firsthand, which was really struggling on and off the field after the departure of Jim Harbaugh. How have they turned this around, not even in the front office, but on the field?
Yeah, I think the main point of this team compared to the last Super Bowl appearance is I think you had a team that was, a lot of battlers, a lot of good players, but not a lot of stars. They were really well coached by Kyle Shanahan when he introduced this new system, and there's a lot of excitement around it. He got the most out of their players, probably more than he should have, and it's a team that really overperformed. But this team is full of stars this time. So last time it was forgivable, to lose Super Bowl. I'm sure the fans were upset, but they thought, there's this team's on the up and up. But this time you've got a really good coach in the prime of his career, and you've got a lot of stars in the prime of their career. And so I think if you talk about those two teams, this one's way more primed to win a Super Bowl. And I think the fans will have much higher expectations on this team. The obvious growth of this team hasn't been super linear in the sense that the players have changed a lot. You're not seeing a growth of a first-year quarterback to a fourth-year quarterback. But you have seen a team that's gone, what's not working? Okay, Jimmy G is good, but is he not, is he not the guy? And we're willing to kind of just retool and try something else. And it was obviously helpful to have Purdy sort of flower a little bit and show some sprouts before Jimmy G was shipped off. But this is a team that they sort of put the pieces together over the last 4 years. And I think for them, they're going to be hoping it culminates in a victory this Sunday and Monday.
They're definitely a team that's never been afraid to make moves to improve. So Jimmy G got into the Super Bowl, got them very close. And I mean, they're around the mark in the preceding years, but they weren't afraid to go all in on a rookie quarterback in Trey Lance. And obviously it didn't turn out. They put a lot of draft capital into that. But most teams would think you've made an egregious error. Your window is shut. Then they go and pick Brock Purdy, last pick of the draft, and he's a Pro Bowl level quarterback. They go and trade for Christian McCaffrey. They develop someone like Brandon Ayuk, who on draft night, people are saying, who the hell is Brandon Ayuk and why is he going in the top 40 picks in the draft? He's now in second team All-Pro. This is such a well-run organization from the top to the bottom. And it's not that surprising because we know San Fran have had a lot of success in the past, but they seem to have not really missed on any of these later draft picks or any of the players they've picked up. Is that due to good development, or is that due to the brilliant coaching of Kyle Shanahan? Because we talk about how good Kyle Shanahan is. He's pretty much the perfect regular season coach, but is he also great at developing talent as well, D?
Yeah, I'm not so sure about development. Definitely, I think the way he coaches gives players a chance to excel in terms of they're very well structured. He understands the players really well, how to use them, when to use them, how to scheme for them. So I think that really helps. But I think you have to give credit to the scouting team and whatever development personnel they have in the 49ers organization. Because as you said, they've been able to trade for stars, but they've been able to also build a lot of stars from within and make names of guys from scratch. And I think for a successful organization, you saw the Rams win a Super Bowl a few years ago with a mixture of that as well. Homegrown talent, but also being willing to trade and pay money for stars. And I think they understood that mold and have gone down a similar route.
I think we saw it with the Patriots as well. I mean, they traded for Stephon Gilmore from the Buffalo Bills. He goes on to be Defensive Player of the Year, wins them a Super Bowl. I mean, the Denver Broncos thought, we're loaded, we're ready to go. We don't have a quarterback. They go and get Peyton Manning. A good team has to develop stars within their own organization and also go out and find the right players, which are the missing pieces. That is it for San Francisco in terms of their journey to Super Bowl is our big storyline. I think we should move on and have a little bit more fun. We've done all the big names, all the big storylines. Let's talk about the Super Bowl itself. We are back, and I want to talk to everyone, especially you, especially Daniel, because you're the only one here, about some of the key matchups in this year's Super Bowl. Now, we talked at length about how good KC's pass defense is, but we haven't really honed in on the great wide receivers that San Francisco has, namely Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. They'll be matched up against in this one. Trent McDuffie, first team All-Pro this year from Kansas City, and L'Jarius Sneed, who was second team All-Pro and had the big play in the AFC title game, punching the ball out of Zay Flowers' hands. How do you see two superstar wide receivers go up against two elite secondary members from Kansas City? This could be one of the biggest matchups of this year's Super Bowl.
It's an electrifying matchup, as our man The Rock would say. If you think about these two receivers on San Francisco, any other game, and you'd be thinking these guys are the game winners, they're the match winners, no doubt. If they have big games, it's all over. We see what the team did with Debo versus without Debo and how much of a difference that made. But it's a real problem for them that their two-star receivers have to come up against a secondary that contains two guys who probably should have both been first-team All-Pro. I'd say L'Jarius Sneed was unlucky to be a second-team, although to be acknowledged as second-team All-Pro is still an amazing achievement. I think they can definitely do a good job of neutralizing Debo, Samuel, and Ayuk. Obviously, you've still got Kittle and McCaffrey, and you've got a lot of other problems there for you. But in terms of a team that will be well suited to match up against this 49ers team, I think the Chiefs defense and the players that they have are sort of built for it.
They are, because Kansas City don't really give up a lot of big plays, and that's what they'll be searching for with San Francisco. I think they'll run it a fair bit, but look to get the play action, or at least the second and third down long passes to Ayuk and Debo Samuel. How would you describe those who haven't watched a lot of L'Jarius Sneed and McDuffie this year? Are they strong corners? Are they physical corners? Or are they shifty, fast-moving corners who will do well to stop the big plays, but maybe hold them around the line of scrimmage?
Yeah, I think especially Sneed, you don't get big plays on him a lot. We've seen it here and there. But what I like is you saw from that play against Zay Flowers, they can make those big plays as well, whether it's a tackle for loss or turning a potential long yardage play into a short yardage play. That Flowers thing, you can't really underestimate it because it changed the game, no doubt. And he was going for the ball. Obviously, at the 1 yard line, there's not that many other things that you can do, but just the smartness in that moment with no thinking time to know exactly what you should be trying to do and be so focused there. I think he's such a smart player as well. And if I'm the 49ers, I'm telling Ayuk and Samuel this week, hold on to the ball. Don't be sloppy. Don't make any careless mistakes because they'll capitalize those Chiefs plays.
Absolutely. They know how to make the big plays in the big spots, but also so do Debo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, particularly Debo Samuel. I'd like to see him with maybe some jet sweeps, a couple of runs, because he's someone that can break apart this game, no matter who he's matched up against. Another big matchup in this game. It is star rookie wide receiver from the Kansas City Chiefs, Rashee Rice, up against Tre'Davious Ward. So Tre'Davious Ward has been one of the best cornerbacks in football this year, and he is a traveling corner. We think, will go with Rice throughout most of this game. How do we see young Rashee Rice match up against a veteran cornerback like Tre'Davious Ward? And do we still think he'll have a big impact in this game? Because he's been heavily lent on behind Travis Kelce through Kansas City's pass attack.
Yeah, this matchup worries me as well. I think Rashee Rice has done really well for a rookie. We're talking about a guy who exceeded 950 yards even with a slow start. But he's actually Mahomes' genuine number one option at receiver. And if Tre'Davious Ward can clamp him down, which is a very real possibility, it becomes a really tough day for Mahomes and the Chiefs offense. So this is a matchup that gives me a lot of worries.
It does. I believe in Rashee Rice, but I think sometimes the younger players do struggle, particularly wide receivers in the bigger games when teams can really hone in about 2 weeks to do their research on a young player like Rashee Rice, who hasn't quite dominated in big games this year, but he has been a constant threat for Patrick Mahomes. This is one of the biggest matchups this week. It is Jawaan Taylor up against Nick Bosa, the former Defensive Player of the Year and one of the best sack artists in the NFL. Nick Bosa is up against someone in Jawaan Taylor who led the league in laundry. He had the most flags against this year. He really struggled against the elite pass rushers. I think this could be arguably the biggest matchup in this game because if Nick Bosa can get home and put pressure on Patrick Mahomes, that could cause 2 or 3 sacks, potentially a couple of turnovers.
Yeah, it's one of those things we think about. Nick Bosa last week against the Lions was a game changer. I had 2 sacks, put a lot of pressure on. And I think you talked about, Jawaan Taylor as well. Someone who doesn't instill confidence necessarily all the time. it's not a matchup that you want. You never want a star player who's, an absolute animal going against someone who's known to give away flags, because those penalties are going to hurt.
Yes. And we saw it last week. I mean, Bosa had 2 sacks on Penei Sewell, who's one of the best tackles in the league. Up against Shawan Taylor, he could have, 4 or 5 QB hits, which would be dangerous, dangerous times for Kansas City.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's some matchups where you think could go either way. This one is one of those ones where it's hard to see Bosa having a game that doesn't really impact the game significantly unless he's going to get double coverage all game.
Yes, I mean, we've seen that in big games before. I think Bill Belichick threw double coverage the entire Super Bowl at Aaron Donald. You can actually take away those guys, but it kind of messes up your whole game plan of what else you're doing in terms of your offensive line. You can take away the superstars, but then other guys through good coaching can get you in big spots. Another matchup I want to talk about is Isaiah Pacheco, who's one of my favorite players, up against Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, and also the interior line from San Francisco. Now, Pacheco has been a solid player who's had really good numbers in this postseason. I mean, the yards per attempt and carry are not fantastic, but he's been heavily leaned on, especially in cold weather games. There's going to be pristine conditions inside a dome. It probably won't be the same game script for Isaiah Pacheco, but I do expect him to have a lot of a power running game in this one, because they've had success running the football this year. But how will it go against Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, 2 of the best linebackers in the NFL?
Yeah, it really hurts your big playability, I guess, when you've got confidence in your linebackers like the 49ers would. But Pacheco is that guy who gets you some of those grunt yards. I still think he's going to be getting those 4 or 5 yard runs to set up really achievable second and third downs. And Pacheco is a guy that will get you yards after the tackle as well. So the people will make contact with him, but that doesn't mean you're going to get him down and you're going to stop him right there. That's what makes him special. And I can't see in a game like a Super Bowl him not running with every bit of intent possible. So will he get the 40-yard runs, special runs here and there? Maybe not. We've seen the 49ers actually give up big plays, especially early in games. So, I wouldn't rule it out, but I still think Pacheco is going to be a really efficient runner in this game.
Okay, I do think Pacheco will have a big workload in this one. What's his nickname? The Tasmanian Devil. I don't know what college he went to, but how do you get nicknamed after the Tasmanian Devil? And if they do win, I expect him to come to Australia and parade Super Bowl trophy around Tasmania, maybe do some shopping centre appearances, because it could be quite lucrative for Isaiah.
For sure. I mean, he could become an Australian icon if you market it the right way. It's amazing an animal that's largely been extinct for a long time. It's such good press coverage around the world, but obviously cartoon, the Tassie Devil had a big impact on that. And I think he kind of runs in the same way that the cartoon Tassie Devil moves. It looks a bit like a whirlwind. There's a lot of spinning and moving, flailing limbs. And I assume that's where the name came from rather than any link to Australia itself.
I think his steps on his Fitbit or VivoFit, whatever he uses, that'd be incredible, because he actually takes about 6 steps to go half a meter every single time. He has been one of the most interesting runners this year, one I've loved to watch every single week. The last matchup I want to talk about, it's a big one, and I really want to get inside your brain for this one. It is, of course, Andy Reid versus Kyle Shanahan, the people that are in charge of the signals in this game. We talked about Mahomes and Purdy a little bit, but the coaching, who do you trust more? The big question, who do you think is going to execute better in the big game? We know Andy Reid has won 2 Super Bowls already. Kyle Shanahan hasn't quite got there just yet, but who do you place your trust in for the big game?
Yeah, usually Kyle Shanahan versus 90% of coaches, I'm just saying straight away that I'm backing him in. I think what's dangerous around him versus Andy Reid, one, we've already got proof of how that matchup went a few years ago. Reid has the upper hand in terms of the 1v1 matchups in big games. The other thing is Shanahan's looked a bit shaky at times with some of the performances, particularly against the Lions in the first half of last week. I didn't feel like they had it all together. I didn't feel like they scripted that game early as strong as we've maybe been used to seeing the 49ers perform at the beginning of games. And I think Andy Reid is a guy who can really neutralize what Shanahan brings to the table. I think they're different styles of coaches. Shanahan's an offensive. Weezy comes from the system that a lot of people come from, which is his father's system, which had been very successful, obviously, with those back-to-back Super Bowls, with the Denver Broncos being his father's recent legacy. I think if I'm had to choose between the two coaches, who do I think we can trust more? I think we have to be Andy Reid at this point, based on what he's done. But that doesn't take away from the offensive genius that I think Shanahan is. And I think, at the end of the day, he's got the team with more talent, despite Mahomes being maybe one of the best players of all time and playing opposite him. So I think, even if he doesn't have his best coaching day, it's still a team that can take it all the way.
It's hard to go past Andy Reid. I understand that. I mean, he's got obviously the best player, arguably, in the last 15 years, besides Tom Brady. But he seems to design all these plays, which are pretty much unstoppable. How many times we've seen a little shovel pass? We've got the ball to Travis Kelce in space when he's been covered for the first 20 minutes of a game. He seems to be a genius at designing play calls to get his best players open. But Kyle Shanahan has done that as well. He just hasn't done it as effectively in the big games. I think we need to see it first with Kyle to put our trust in Kyle. But once that moment happens, Kyle will be the guy that we go to as we see as the best coach in the league. This has to happen first. And not going to get into our predictions just yet, but I do think this could potentially be the final the final step for Andy Reid. No, the final step for Kyle Shanahan to put himself into the best coaches in football, potentially the last 15 years, if he's able to game plan correctly in this one. Do you have any worries about Andy Reid in close games anymore? I feel like he's kind of evaporated that with the amount of wins he's had with Patrick Mahomes. It's not really a thing, but we grew up with this being this thing that he can't actually execute the last 5 minutes of a contest.
Yeah, I think once it's put to bed, like in a sense of once you won multiple Super Bowls, you're probably not that worried every minute about, what are people going to think of you if you stuff this up? Because you've got 2 rings, already. You've got all this success. So I think that's kind of out the window for him. He's probably focused on executing and winning games because the floor of his career is raised so much higher. The ceiling hasn't been determined yet, but worst comes to worst, this guy, has been an ultra successful coach in the NFL. And I don't think he'll be losing sleep at night over, small decisions here and there and what is he going to do in the last 2 minutes. A lot of that stuff, I'm sure he's learned from his mistakes. He's put a lot of things in place. And he's a very seasoned professional. So, I don't have a lot of concern around Andy Reid in the big moments, like as you said, he would have 5 years ago.
Yeah, and I don't really have the same with Shanahan. I know he's got some skeletons in his closet. He's had some chances to win big games. He hasn't quite got there, but we've seen his brilliance week to week, and it's the best roster he'll probably ever have. This is his best chance to win the big one. That's it for all the big matchups in this one, D. Any other sort of memories or musings you want to bring into this one as we look forward to the big game? We've got some great halftime performances potentially from Usher. We've got some great memories from Super Bowls the years gone by. What springs to mind when you think of this time of year, the big Super Bowl weekend?
Yeah, I was going to ask you what Usher songs you're looking forward to, but I know you're not really an Usher man. I wasn't sure if you could even name me 5 Usher songs, but sometimes your catalog surprise me a little bit.
Okay. Obviously you got Yeah, which is his biggest hit. Little John. OMG. Oh my God. Now, that was a big one.
The best stuff.
No, but that was a big one growing up because there was this meme with Shooter McGavin. It was like, oh my God, what is going on? Or something like that. So OMG. Did he do a song with like David Guetta called like Without You or something?
Yeah,
that Usher?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm at 3. This is all Fox FM, like 2012 era at about 4:30 as a break between the Hamish and Andy show. This is all my Usher knowledge. He had like an album where it's all just like breaking up with his wife. So there's like 10 songs there. I don't know the name of them, but that'll do me.
Sounds like you're describing your Confessions album. Look, I think
yes, Confessions.
R&B Usher fans who would be disappointed at the ones that you do remember. But look, fair to say, probably both of us, this is not the Super Bowl halftime performance we've been looking forward to most in the last decade.
No.
Is there anyone that you're just kind of hoping for that you haven't seen yet? That's just, every year be that person, but it's just not.
So it's a hard one. I mean, I feel like, as I see Usher on the TV right now, promo for the Super Bowl, there's a lot of big names that have done it already. I mean, had Lady Gaga, one of the biggest artists in the world. I enjoyed her performance. I haven't seen many good bands, I feel. I mean, but I feel that they performed earlier, like in the early 2000s. I mean, we had U2, we had Red Hot Chili Peppers, we had Paul McCartney. There's no one I can say that some global superstar that I want to see right now. I mean, I don't hate Taylor Swift. I don't like Taylor Swift. I'm indifferent about Taylor Swift. She hasn't done the Super Bowl before. She might do it soon. But I'm not begging for Taylor Swift to be in the Super Bowl, D. There isn't someone I think I've got to have you there. I like the Killers. The Killers aren't very big in America as they are in Australia. They were very good at the grand final. But they probably wouldn't get a gig at the Super Bowl, though, Dan.
Speaking of, obviously, Killers did a great job here. Do we think an Australian big icon band like AC/DC could do Super Bowl halftime, or they're not big enough?
No, they could definitely do Super Bowl halftime. They're massive. They're massive still in America. They are legendary. I'd like to see him at the grand final because I think this is, as we go into 2024, this is the last year they're touring. I think AC/DC. So they could be like a sleeper chance to do this year's AFL grand final. Oh, I don't know. There'd be someone that you can think of that I'm not thinking of right now that you'd love to see at the Super Bowl, a big American act or even a big global act. I like Bruno Mars. He was great at the Super Bowl, but I couldn't tell you right now someone I'm really clinging on to. Dua Lipa, she's good. She's talented.
Yeah, I think she did the Champions League final where
Yeah, no, I don't remember that one. That's when we lost to Real Madrid. She did, she did one kiss actually.
Yeah. No, I think a lot of big names already played. Probably the one that's interesting is, Jay-Z's on the committee to decide these artists, but he himself hasn't done it, and he's got a pretty big catalog. So I reckon if his career starts to flare a little bit, or he's got a new album, I wouldn't be surprised if he comes with the committee and says, "What do we think about myself for Super Bowl halftime?"
True.
Really enjoy in there. So I think that could be a possibility.
That self-appointing yourself it's a very very smart move. We saw Beyonce.
What's the point of being on a board if you can't, put yourself in the highest, most powerful position?
That's the ultimate nepotism privilege viewpoint you could possibly have, Dave. I do enjoy it. We had Beyonce in Super Bowl a couple of years ago. She was very good as well. I don't think Jay was part of that concert though. I don't think Drake has never done the Super Bowl. Do you think he could bring down the house at the Super Bowl? He'd be a good halftime performance.
Seems more like a Canadian Football League Super Bowl kind of. I think Drake definitely could do it. I think his popularity is waning a bit, but maybe my read is off.
Okay. We had the Weeknd a couple of years ago. He was really good as well. I'm just thinking everyone that's big has actually done it, I feel.
Yeah, obviously there's like big pop artists like Bieber and stuff that haven't done it. That probably could do it.
Bieber.
Would I be like clamoring for these people? Not necessarily, but there's still some big names out there.
Yeah, could you tell me any big bands that have done it recently? I feel like it's more like a solo artist does it because they've got the whole pageantry, they've got the show, the fireworks, all the different costume changes. It's not really something for a good American band or even a global band to do anymore because it feels like it's more geared around a solo artist and their face on every single billboard, not 4 or 5 guys with long hair, shabby looking beards and guitars.
Yeah, it's kind of changed a little bit. That's become the norm to have that big solo artist sort of in the peak of their career. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen a little bit more. I think, interestingly, I saw a stat that said Super Bowl attracts nearly 50-50 audience between male and female. But during the regular season, it's like more like 75-25 male to female. So they really love the halftime show of the ladies. And I wouldn't be surprised if they try and get these acts like Usher that are very much loved by the ladies just to get that televised viewership up a little bit more.
Well, you talk about the viewership this year, D, 50-50. It could be more one way than the other for the first time ever. Is it possible more women could watch the Super Bowl than men?
It is, but I mean, it's pretty amazing to think that there'd be these women who are turning on the Super Bowl just to see if you cut away Taylor Swift. Like, I get it that you like Taylor Swift, but like, it seems like something you could just watch the highlights of later. I don't know whether it'd be worth tuning into a game.
I know. I definitely couldn't see there's any celebrity that would make me want to watch an event. Like, if I'm watching the Lakers play, I know Jack Nicholson or Leonardo DiCaprio will be there, but I'm not watching for them. I'm watching for Kobe and LeBron. People watching a sporting contest to see a cutaway of Taylor Swift giving a high five to Jackson Mahomes. Still a bit perplexing to me, Dan. I don't know about you.
Yeah, for sure. And I think definitely a lot of internationally that 50-50 viewership, but I don't know if a lot of women will be taking it off Swiftie fans. There are a lot of men Swiftie fans as well in Australia.
There are.
Recently. I don't know if many of them will be taking time off work on Monday just to Super Bowl. But piling off that, Das, it's tough being an NFL fan in Australia in the sense that the Super Bowl's in the middle of a work day on a Monday. It probably brings on a bigger question around the etiquette around attending any Super Bowl event or staying home to watch the game. I think the work from home COVID thing has been a huge blessing for a lot of NFL fans because they're going to work from home on Monday. And I say that in air quotes, in a sense of there won't be much work going on, but being home will allow them to have the game in the background or as the main show. Unfortunately, there are some jobs like mine, unfortunately, where you cannot work from home and watching the game becomes challenging. So how do we go about getting the day off on Monday? You haven't got it off this year. It's probably a bit late, unless you're happy to call a sickie, which I'd love for your opinion on. But what's the proper etiquette going forward?
I feel like you need to make up some sort of doctor's appointment or something that happens to be midday on a Monday for no reason at all. You need to have some sort of excuse, and you need to just have offshoots from that. Like, I need to leave early. I'm going to be a while till I come back. It's on the other side of town. Like, you can't just pull a sickie the night beforehand. It's just too sus. And everyone knows Super Bowl is on. I remember back in school, I think there was 3 of our friends actually pulled a sickie for the Super Bowl. And the school were immediately onto it. It's like, you've clearly just done this to watch the Super Bowl. You need to be more sleeper than that, okay? You need to be under the radar. And you can't just say, oh, I want to watch the Super Bowl either. You can't put it in those terms because then the cat's out of the bag. Like, the genie's out of the bottle. You need to find a way to approach the subject and do it under the radar. Otherwise, you can get in big trouble. Because it is a bit of a dilemma for us. I mean, yourself, you've got to work for most of Monday. How will you sneak a peek at the Super Bowl?
That's what I was asking. What do you think is going too far? Like, if you pretend to faint at 11 a.m., hand on their head, falling backwards, is that too far? If
well, you've done that before, though, D. You did fall on your neck, but that was like a year 6 English class. You can't use that again. It was 20 years ago.
I was going to say there also wasn't fake, so that wasn't.
Oh, I thought it was just good acting.
100% real, I promise. But I'm thinking, what are our other options? Probably some, red paint, stick around the eye. Are you going conjunctivitis?
Oh, that's creative.
There's a few options there, but I think it's always going to be sus if it's Monday morning of the Super Bowl.
It is. I mean, you could get an ice pack and put it on your head or something like that. You could put some dots on your face and say you've got chicken pox, smallpox. There's a lot of different ways you can go about it. But I personally would be honest well in advance. And then if they say no, you lie up until the date. And then you ghost them. You give them nothing. And if they question what you're doing, just say you had some sort of family emergency or that you were incredibly unwell, that you couldn't actually use your face, mouth, or hands to respond back to them. And then you work overtime. You give them more than what you would have. Well, you give the bare minimum, actually. You give the bare minimum of work of what you would have done. But if your boss is any good, if he's worth anything, if he's not an absolute scoundrel, he'll let you watch the Super Bowl. I mean, it's the biggest event in US sports, Steve. You've got to find a way to watch it.
For sure. And I'd love to hear some successful stories from people, whether it's a fake offsite meeting that they scheduled weeks in advance. Like, I'm sure people get creative with it. We'd love to share tips with other NFL fans here in Australia. So if you've got a good story, how you got out of work, how you watch the Super Bowl, let us know. Maybe we can use it for the next few years.
Absolutely. Let us know. Even if you're doing it on Monday, send us a little photo. We won't put it on Instagram at all. We'll keep it very under the radar. We will not tell the whole world that you are playing footy on Monday morning. That is all the fun stuff. That's all the big extravagant entertainment aspect of the Super Bowl. But finally, to end episode 20 of the late snap of what has been an incredible year, D, I need to know, what is your final prediction for the Super Bowl and the Super Bowl MVP?
Yeah, it's a really tough one. And honestly, I'm not even sure I won't change my mind between now.
Yeah.
But I kind of, we're going through this pod and we're working through all the facts and the stats, the one that really got me is the Kansas City offense. It's limited. There's not that many options, right? And we know Travis Kelce is going to go all out this game. We know they're going to do everything they can to get him going. But, I think if Rashee Rice can get sort of clamped down a little bit, there's just not going to be enough options on the field for Mahomes. I know he's going to scramble for those great first-yard plays. I know he's going to be able to move the ball and get points, but I don't know if it's going to be enough. to get enough points to keep up with this electric San Francisco offense. And I think this is a time for Kyle Shanahan. We talk about that arc of the San Francisco 49ers. The Kansas City Chiefs are more on the down end of their arc. They're kind of happy to be here in the sense of this is not the prime of this team's build, but this is the prime of 49ers. And I think for that reason, I'm going 49ers 28-21.
49ers win their first Super Bowl since the 90s under the stewardship of Steve Young. Big prediction there, D. Interesting how you say that KC almost happy to be here. Is that what you're trying to say? That they probably didn't expect to be in the Super Bowl?
I think if you go Christmas Day after that game against the Oakland Raiders, you tell them you guys are Super Bowl bound, there'd be a lot of shock. There'd be a lot of faces going, really, us? But obviously that defense believed in itself the whole time, but it was just whether the offense could do enough to get them there. I'm not sitting here sort of throwing crap on that Kansas City defense because I want to respect them for what they are, which is a really great unit and one of the best of the last decade in some statistical measures. But I just think that for Kyle Shanahan and the smart coaching tree at the San Francisco 49ers, they've got a limited amount of things to stop with the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think they got the players to do it.
Yes. All great points there, D. Kansas City, they've been the best team of the last 5 years. They've been in the Super Bowl, it feels like every other year. They've got the best quarterback in football. They've probably got the best coach in football as well. Haven't talked about him enough. Travis Kelce is one of the greatest players I've ever seen. Just straight up, forget about tight end. He now has the most receptions in the history of the NFL postseason. He is on a different level in the postseason. Having said all that, I will be joining you and tipping San Francisco. I just think they are the better team. They've got better players across the park. And if Brock Purdy can settle himself, settle the nerves, and the bright lights are not too big for him on this occasion, they will do enough to win this Super Bowl. I think it'll be similar. I think it'll be 28-24. San Francisco's way. We'll get a heavy dose of Christian McCaffrey against the Kansas City run defense. And he will be the Super Bowl MVP with 110 yards and 2 touchdowns. And it will be the first Super Bowl victory for Kyle Shanahan and the San Francisco 49ers in over 20 years.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. I think in terms of Super Bowl MVP, there's not that many players that it can be. Do we think like a Nick Bosa type will probably get to Mahomes enough? Probably not. We know Mahomes is quite, he can dance and he can move on his feet. I think if the 49ers put up 28 points, you're going to see either it be CMC or probably Brock Purdy if a combination of Debo and Kittle can get, on fire in this game. And so I think the CMC MVP pick is a really good one as well. And I think that would cap off his season beautifully.
It absolutely would. And he talked about him having one of the great all-time seasons. Imagine he has Offensive Player of the Year, wins the Super Bowl and the Super Bowl MVP. That is Hall of Fame resume worthy, which I'd love to see from Christian, who's the ultimate professional and has been one of the best players that I've seen in my limited time watching football, but one of the most enjoyable and unique players of all time. D, that's it. That's the predictions. That's the episode done for episode 20 of the Late Snap. It is time for the Super Bowl to unfold. Before we get into our final goodbyes, I just must say it has been an absolute pleasure doing this show with you, D. We started off as the Time on NFL show all those months ago. It was 5.5 months ago we started this show. We didn't know what it would evolve into, but it's been one of the greatest experiences of my life, and I'm very, very thankful to do it with you, my great friend, Dan.
Yeah, look, I think it's something we've talked about doing for a while, and obviously with you being an experienced and semi-famous podcaster, it made more sense than ever to start now. And yeah, look, recording the podcast, it's been a challenge at times in terms of getting a time that works for both of us, and that's why we decided to go with the Late Snap, because we don't always get it out on time, but we always try and definitely enable viewers here in Australia to get a little bit of content, a little bit of a preview of the games coming up and the context around them. So although we know that the listenership isn't huge, we hope that some people got some value out of it for sure.
Absolutely. I think the idea behind the show, also just to have a chat and see you every week, which I don't always get the chance to do, and talk a bit of sport, was to educate people in Australia about this great game that we've fallen in love with over the last 15 or so years. It is a bit difficult to understand. I hear people listening to the show and they say, I love your podcast. I still don't even understand the sport of American football because it is so complex. But I hope we've done, in some small way, made you appreciate and understand this sport that Daniel and I have grown to love. It has been a pleasure. I've loved doing every single second of this show with you. And we're still in talks. I mean, we do have we have a sponsor, I would say, the Orong Hotel, which is going to be a sponsor of the Time On podcast. But a couple of bit more sponsorships, a little bit more funding. Maybe we do come back for season 2, D. We haven't discussed this. I don't know whether I can keep you under contract or you will go on to bigger and better things.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll talk money off air, but there's definitely going to be a conversation in the off season. But look, there's no doubt I hope to be back next season. I think there's going to be some big sponsorship deals in the off season with you at the business helm, and yeah, looking forward to next year. But enjoy the Super Bowl, D. Have a good time. Hope you win a few bets too, and there's some double positives in the whole day. And yeah, have an extra hot dog on me. I heard you're going to be chowing down a few hot dogs Monday, so enjoy.
I'll be chowing down hot dogs like those big old San Antonio women chow down churros there. I'll be double fisting them throughout the entire afternoon, and it should be a great day, Super Bowl Monday in Australia. That's it for another episode, D. As always, it has been a pleasure to have the Late Snap community with us and my great friend Daniel from Sydney. We'll see you all potentially for an off-season special, but most likely for season 2 of the Late Snap. Hope you all enjoyed it and enjoy the Super Bowl. And as always, D, it has been great talking to you.
You too, D. Enjoy.